The millennial celebrations of the fish speaker schools comes at a time when geode has been true to the maxims of integral economics for over 500 years. That geode incorporates the breadth and width of our universe's wide variety of xenocultural and exesiate needs was something that the ancients could never imagine. Archaic proto-economics, like capitalism and communism, were still present as far back as Chome, trying to check and balance the power they held. Being grounded in integral economics, geode is no longer bound by questions of politics. Without such a system, we would expand to a critical mass that would mean our mutual destruction. We surrender power unconditionally, so our success is the universe's success, measured in processes, not goals. Geode progressive philosophy.
The meeting of the directors of Geode was not scheduled for another 3 demicycles, so an emergency annex meeting had been established unanimously by remote. The Guild Ixian Omni Assimilant Directorship had existed in name for several centuries. The edicts upon which Ixian Guild alliances were coded, however, spanned millennia back to the time of the god Tyrant, and the precedent of Ixian Guild cooperation and collusion could be found in the mythic stories of Muad'Dib. Geode directors included representatives from the major guild enclaves as well as a high-exposure Ixian technocrat, cybermech theorists, and parliamentary integral economists. Yashika Amper was the technocrat imperator of Ix, and it was her role to begin the geode proceedings. Bred through the Nori Amper school from the same breeding process that produced Hui Nori, Yashika and her twin Yanima represented a style of Nori Amper breeding that stressed the undoing of the ancient male gender bias in technological creation. Hui Nori, who wedded the god Tyrant himself, began to symbolize the issue that the male urge to create was often externalized and almost never had the grace of biological creation. The Nori Amper school stressed that female Ixians had an intrinsic understanding of the biological bias, and technology created by their school was not bound to the male overcoming of the creative urge. As females had once continued the species, their machines need not reflect such an unthinking reaction, so the cybermech theorists would pronounce. Yashika reflected on these roles as she approached the small orbit-to-surface pod that would transport her to the Parliament Hall. Although the meetings could be attended remotely via hollow imaging, a tradition of physical presence of the directors along assured a high level of attention and importance that all geode meetings demanded. Yashika passed into the atmosphere of Ix from her residence on the artificial ring encircling Ix in orbit. The Ixian homeworld echoed much of the technical architecture that had been introduced on Old Gamu, known to mythology as Gedi Prime. The tale to flourish. We have truly transformed technology into art. Yashika descended toward the surface, the city of Riches, named in honor of the sacrificed fabrication world, destroyed during the bloodshed of the returning. Riches was a symbol of the age of integral economics. The city was no longer spires of glass steel that could only be compared to the rank-and-file phalanx, as was common during the scattering. The integration years had witnessed a redesign of fundamental concepts in architecture. The decentralization of Ixian urban systems were across-planet arranged by an equation of functionality, aesthetics, and metamorphosis that can only be compared to non-Euclidean geometry. This bizarre aesthetic had become common to the Ixians, but it was the same strangeness that kept off-worlders away from Ix. Visually maddening, visitors were unable to reference such a groundless contrast of space and matter. Ixians themselves found other worlds equally unpleasant, with the effects of claustrophobia lessened by implants when they did leave Ix. Yashika stepped across the portal and onto the transport to the Rishezian Bureau Palace. We have always been the perfect companion to the guildsmen. To bend space and time, they exchanged the static view of human, in the same way we have done with implants. We were the first to integrate with our environment. We turned our dependence on device into a philosophy of enhancement. The directors were prepared for the moment of her arrival. Yashika began her convoluted style of address that was the practice on Ix, formal grammars governed by a linguistic calculus that was best suited for technical descriptions. Not a spoon for just any mouth. She advanced to the crisis at hand. I need not understate the locus of our situational roles. The verification of the ones with many faces as an epidemic transformation of the master face dances is evident from all reports. What individual reports need addressing? Eric spoke first, his synth-spiced body mutated by the El-Edric school's tradition, squirming within his spice tank. The ones with many faces see the Dune Revenant. However, they are no closer than we are discovering if the planet ever existed. All histories show that there was never a second Dune. Yet that is what they seek. Almec, a cybernetic space folder, shifted while Eric spoke, but said nothing. Eric had ancient roots as a descendant of the Edrics, who had known Muad'Dib back in the age when guild navigators were rated by a stage of hyperspatial specificity. Almec, however, was truly a product of the integration, folding space by means of internal Ixian machines. He was of a school whose motto was, "Let history be forgotten." Almec piped in with his standard argument line, "The age of spice is over. We now fold space with biomechanics. Our goal should be to continue along the path we began over 1,000 years ago. I speak to the utter reversal of the edicts of the Butlerian Jihad." Almec spoke of the space-folding implants, which could not only think, but were actually able to dream the spice trance that allowed the possibilities of space-folding. Edric could not help himself. "Find Dune Revenant and the true spice, and the ancient ways shall return." Yashika detected their interaction and interjection. "We must allow ourselves to put aside the ambitions of the enclaves, or the Ixian assemblage, and act as one in this matter." Yashika motioned to Nero Pathé as she continued. "For that reason we should proceed according to the algorithms of the generalists." Nero grimaced at this request. Yashika purposefully excluded his extremist algorithms, which often worked outside of integral economic limits. The generalist algorithms had enabled Ix and the Guild an alternative to politic and the integration, but it did not ensure Geode's place in the economy of the universe. The extremist algorithms that Neuropathe and his line had theorized sought to use the resources available to Geode to reverse the natures of the integration in a political military manner. Some saw them as Ixian nationalists that sought a new empire, in spite of all the calculations that proved lack of real stability in all empires. Before he could submit his objection, Yashika added, "We wouldn't want to undo the stability that Geode needs to continue the known worlds along the path of integration. Our intentions should continue as they always have, especially in safeguarding our knowledge of Shiana's path and Dune Revenant from the Master Face Dancers. Yours is the road to failure for us all." Yashika continued, "The location of Dune Revenant and the outcome of that phase of our history is unknown even to those of our rank. The ancient history tells that Jethro Amper, my ancestor, aided the Duncan in his revelations, folded Dune Revenant outside our space by means of the encrypted phase shift, forever placing the planet and its moons outside of our universe. The final fate of Shiana, Duncan, and Skydal were never revisited. Nero Pathé chose this moment to strike. As an Ixian delegate, I attended a fascinating lecture during the millennial celebrations on Wadra, this very subject. Many of those gathered took exceptional interest in the visitation that your sister Yanima allows the universe to view her via spy streams. Some talk about the truth of the goal of Paul, and the fate of Shiana seems to be ignored. I wonder how the Master Face Dancers are regarding all of this. The fact that Yanima had chosen the life of a scholar often found its way into criticisms of Yashika's role as technocrat imperator of Ix. Yanima's interest in questions of ancient history was something that Yashika had never concerned herself. History always seems like a fetish, but Yanima never saw it that way. If Yanima could see that, she would be sitting here in the Ixian Council. Ix was all about fetish. Yashika answered Nero calmly, "The Master Face Dancers are not our only concern. The implications of the ones with many faces seem to outweigh even their face dancers, the encryption key to the Dune Revenant. Could we not ally ourselves with one enemy to ward off another enemy that is far greater? Does he admit to collaboration? He must be watched constantly." Yashika calmed herself and added, "Your solution is noted. However, the Council is in need of your functions as a generalist. As you know, our initial inquiry and project confirmed an 88% probability of Shiana's sharing the God Tyrant's dream of becoming a sandworm, a 31% probability of her transforming several of her renegade sisters as well. Our final analysis I have personally compiled, and it is perhaps the most shocking, a 19% chance that Shiana herself, as a sandworm, is still alive today on Dune Revenant, folded away from our universe. The question should not be whether we should inform the Master Face Dancers of her presence. Rather, should we wonder what she has been planning for them and for all of us for the past 2,000 years?